tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Every day there's something or the other for me to go on the bus.
Concern for Metro Vancouver seniors with a full shutdown of the bus system looming. Also,
an international student from India is one of 2 people found dead in a Surrey home. And
here's a chance to think about the golf course in a more ethical way.
Turning Vancouver's public golf courses into housing.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. Thanks for joining us. A glimmer of hope tonight as the threat of a transit shutdown looms large.
Both sides in the weeks-long dispute are heading back to the bargaining table tomorrow. Dan Burrett joins us now. Dan, what are the chances for a deal?
It depends. What common ground can the two sides find to try to get a deal before hundreds of thousands of people are directly hit by a bus shutdown starting on Wednesday? Today, Unifor announced it will meet with Coast Mountain Bus Company tomorrow afternoon to try to find a deal in this weeks-long labor fight. Unifor's national president, Jerry Dias, will be there, and they're prepared to go around the clock until midnight. It says it is willing to compromise, and members don't expect to earn the same as workers in Toronto, though they want to narrow that gap.
We are going back to the table out of respect for the passengers that we serve, out of respect for the workers that need to get to work, and out of respect for the students that need to get to school. We know the public is with us.
Okay, that's tomorrow, Dan, but what backup plans are in place in case both sides can't reach a deal?
Well, TransLink outlined some options for commuters today. Take a look at these. Designated parking spots will be open for carpoolers and those using car shares at SkyTrain Park and Rides. Bikes, which are usually banned on SkyTrains during the peak times, will be allowed, but you'll have to put it in the last car. Pick-up and drop-off zones will be in place at SkyTrain and West Coast Express stops, as well as bus stops near SkyTrain stations. Despite these plans, TransLink says you can expect huge delays if a bus shutdown occurs. TransLink's CEO claims meeting workers' demands on wages could hit passengers very hard.
If our operating costs rises too fast and too steeply, we might have to consider more taxes, more fees, more fare increase, or cutting back, or some combination in between. I hope we don't have to do that, because in the long term, that undermines our ability to grow the system.
So now we wait to see how much each side is willing to move to try to reach a deal. That deadline at this point is midnight tomorrow. Anita, Mike?
Okay, Dan Burrett, live tonight. Thanks.
And TransLink outlined some options to help frustrated commuters cope in the event those talks don't yield a deal. Designated parking spots, as Dan mentioned, will be opened for carpoolers and those using SkyTrain.
In the meantime, many seniors are worried they could be left stranded if there's a complete shutdown of the transit system.
Many rely on public transit to get around, so do a lot of their caregivers.
As Deborah Goebel explains tonight, the shutdown has the potential to leave a lot of people isolated.
Palm spacing and where?
At the South Granville Seniors Centre, the Keep Fit class just got underway. An hour of bicep curls and leg lifts.
And if you know the song, sing the song, folks.
It's been a staple here on Monday mornings for years.
We do exercise and have fun and enjoy. We have a nice social going here too as well. But the main thing is the exercise.
Like most senior centres, this one offers many different programs, from fitness to mahjong to hot lunches. But if there's a bus strike, it's going to be a big problem, because most of the 1,500 seniors here have given up their cars and are completely dependent on transit.
Every day there's something or the other for me to go on the bus.
Still, Veena Mathur says she's supporting the drivers.
They're very caring people. They're very polite to us seniors, and I don't want to see them getting the short end of the stick.
Wow.
Although not everyone is quite as sympathetic.
I never made $36 in my life. So,
an hour, you mean?
An hour, yes. But they do a wonderful job.
And without them, many seniors could find themselves very isolated.
It's going to be very hard for them to not come. And many of them, they are looking forward for the days to come for the activities, just to connect, just to talk with their peers, and be here in the community.
I think that there's going to be a sizable population that may be stuck, and I think that that's going to be a big challenge for employers, for schools, for doctors.
That includes the more than 110 permanent volunteers here at the Senior Centre, many of whom also depend on transit.
It will be difficult to come here because I live near P&E, and so it's quite far away.
We cannot survive without them.
So far, the bus workers and TransLink haven't been able to come to an agreement on wages and working conditions. The province has said it won't intervene, hoping the two sides can work it out together. But if they can't, come Wednesday, a whole lot of seniors are going to find themselves without any way of getting around. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
And CBC News has made numerous requests to interview the Labour Minister, Harry Bains. He has declined all our requests at this time. We've also requested interviews with Premier John Horgan. Those two declined at this time.
Well, the University of Northern British Columbia is now offering students credit as the faculty strike continues to shut down classes in Prince George. 180 professors and other faculty walk off the job on November 7th. Wages are among the key issues being negotiated between the union and the school. Staff have been without a contract since June. About 3,500 students in Prince George and at satellite campuses across the province are affected by the dispute. And an international student is among the two bodies discovered in a Surrey home late last week. She was known for being bright and she was loved by her village in India.
As Joel Ballard reports, her family is now scrambling to get a visa to travel to Canada and some answers about their daughter's death.
A 21-year-old from India recently finished her studies. Prableen Kaur Matharu's death has her family distraught. The whole village loved her. She spoke so softly and nicely. She was so beautiful, a natural beauty. Matharu is from the village of Chiti, near the city of Jalandhar in the Indian state of Punjab. Her parents saved up money to send her to school at Langara College, business studies. Her father says she's always been the top of her class. Where she went to school, she was coming in first. Her photo still hangs there on the main board. Her principal came over. She was the head girl in the school for girls. She was so intelligent. Matharu's body was found inside a home in this Surrey neighborhood. Police have provided few details of what actually happened, but we do know that Matharu's body was one of two found inside a home. And investigators have also confirmed that the woman's death appears to have been a homicide. And while her family mourns, so too does the entire community of Chiti.
Everybody from our village, we have 40-50 families here. Everyone is upset. It's really, really sad news.
Dhaliwal is a family friend of the Matharus. He says Prableen's mother already has a visa, but Gurdial does not. He is waiting for papers to arrive from the RCMP to apply for an emergency visa.
Told me that they are planning to take the body back home. They want to make funeral arrangements in our village.
That visa also holds the key to information surrounding their daughter's death. Dhaliwal says police informed the family of the death, but nothing else. He even contacted police himself to try and get some answers.
I talked to him and he said he cannot give any information. When his family will come, then we will share some information.
In a tweet, IHIT confirmed that the second body found in the house was an 18-year-old man from the Lower Mainland. The only clue for a family searching for answers. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Surrey.
A whopping property tax increase could be coming to homeowners in Vancouver. Now, it's the sixth straight year there's been a hike, but this time the number is turning a lot of heads.
Our municipal affairs reporter, Justin McElroy, joins us now. So, Justin, what can homeowners possibly expect?
Yeah, well, if council passes what staff have proposed, it would mean that for the median home, single-family home in the city of Vancouver, it would be an increase of about $350 next year. Now, property tax increases happen each year in the city, but if you take a look at this graph, for a while this decade, it was around the rate of inflation. But over the past 4 years, it's gone up from 2.5% to 4% to 4.5%, and now for 2020, a proposed 8.2% increase. That's the highest that has been seen in the city in a decade, and is surely going to rear a lot of heads over the next week before this goes to council.
Justin, why is the proposed hike so large?
Well, there's a few reasons. About half of the proposed increase is due to fixed costs, things like contracts for staff, for maintenance, for energy and the like. But about half of it is for new requests, some of them from staff, for instance, more police officers and firefighters, but some of them from this brand new city council who have asked for more money for cleaner streets, for affordable housing, to combat climate change. And it's why Councillor Adrienne Carr says she's going to vote for this budget because she thinks it's reasonable for council to deliver on the things that they campaigned on.
The bigger chunk is going to increases that are de rigueur. I mean, there's like wage increases and just cost of living increases, so that's a sort of bigger chunk. And then there's obviously supply of services that to meet the demands that are there. And then there's new council priorities. So for me, I think budgets are all about delivering service that the citizens want, the people want, and if you're delivering that, I think people are happy.
So the question is whether people will be happy when they see that. There is a special council meeting on this next week. The public can go to that and say what they think about this. Council will have to vote on this sometime before the end of the year.
Justin, thanks very much.
Well, it's never pleasant when you're at the park and you discover a little something. We're talking about dog poop.
What about human waste, though? A woman who lives next to a Vancouver Grandview Park says it's a big issue there. As CBC's Rafferty Baker reports, she's urging the city to provide 24-hour access to washrooms.
Unfortunately, they also left behind some of their waste products, and the city did not want to clean it up.
Zoe Riffard says it was children who found human feces last weekend in the Grandview Park playground. Thankfully, before anyone got into it. Riffard lives across the street and uses the park regularly to play with her daughter and walk her dog.
My dog got into some feces that were behind this rock.
That wasn't the only run-in she says her dog has had with human waste.
On 2 occasions over the summer, my dog came across some human waste in the park and unfortunately ingested some before we realized what he was doing. We thought he was just sniffing at a bush. We didn't realize that there was feces and he was eating some of it.
The park is popular with people living on the street who need a place to sleep. Over the summer, there was a small tent encampment here and a porta potty, but that's been taken away. The park board says vandalism was taking its toll. But there are still lots of people living in vehicles in the neighborhood or sleeping rough on the street. The washroom facility at Grandview Park is well built, but closed overnight, just like the bathrooms at other parks in Vancouver.
We would like there to be access to 24-hour washrooms in this park and across the city, whether that be an attendant who keeps an existing washroom open to be safe, or whether they install something that is easy to manage.
Riffard doesn't blame the people forced to relieve themselves, saying anyone can experience bowel urgency.
On my way to the bank where I anticipate a lineup, so I didn't want to have an accident. But washrooms are crucial. They're watering holes, they're oases, they're miracles on the way to one's destination.
The park board is now planning a city-wide park toilet strategy. Parks Director Howard Norman says he's aware of the issue at Grandview Park. He says anyone who finds human feces should dial 311.
It's not always that easy just to phone and say, hey, we found a pile here in the park, can somebody come and grab it? But we do our best.
Riffard says her calls to city officials haven't seemed to result in a cleanup crew. And she now hopes to see a solution that allows people in her neighborhood to relieve themselves with dignity. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
Housing sales are climbing in BC much faster than anticipated as buyers return to the market after last year's downturn. Cheaper mortgages, a growing population, and price declines have brought buyers back, according to a report by Central One Credit Union. The outlook shows BC's resale market will drop 7% in 2019 compared with last year, but rebound 20% in 2020. A further 4% jump is predicted in 2021. The average home price in Metro Vancouver dropping 10% last year to $690,000. Central One estimates home values across BC will increase 3.8% next year and another 4% in 2021.
A sudden and massive shutdown of Vancouver Island's forestry sector has put thousands of loggers out of work tonight. More than 2,000 workers have been impacted by the temporary shutdown of operations at Mosaic Forest Management. The company says it is being forced to curtail operations because of poor market conditions. The shutdown, combined with a strike at Western Forest Products, puts almost 5,000 people out of work in the forest industry across the province.
It's absolutely devastating to these rural communities, and when the government doesn't step up to the plate and give some kind of a system and cancel programs that basically were creating economic development for these rural communities, just tells rural British Columbia that they don't matter.
It isn't clear how long the shutdown will last. The Truck Loggers Association says it has been told the situation will be reassessed in the new year.
A woman and her dog have been rescued near the Cypress ski resort in what is North Shore Rescue's first call of the season. The woman became lost while hiking with her dog on Sunday night. She got lost on the Eagle Bluffs Trail around 7 p.m. When she realized she was lost, she stopped moving and called 911. The woman was not carrying a light, and she realized the sunlight was dying fast and temperatures were beginning to drop.
Yeah, as you can see, the winter has come. We've got our first snowfall here. This is the first winter search of 2019 for us. And so it's pretty cold, and with the winter coming on, people don't realize that it's getting darker earlier and earlier in the afternoon.
The woman's cell phone had just enough battery to send a text message to rescuers. Crews used the signal to pinpoint her location on the mountain. Rescuers brought the hiker and companion to safety in Cypress Bowl in the parking lot just before midnight. The two were not hurt.
Well, Brett, as we just saw, some snow up on those mountains.
Yes, and well, in this particular situation, that probably didn't help the sort of situation there. But as a skier myself, when I do hear about snow and Cypress together, it does make me feel a little bit better, of course, when everyone can be safe about that. Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement for everywhere here in grey, and this does include Metro Vancouver because this week is turning out to be quite the wintry one. Now, not necessarily in terms of snowfall, but temperatures. My gosh, they're going to be on the colder end of things than we've seen for the past little while. Even take a look right now. These are our current temperatures. Vancouver Airport down to 2 degrees. At one point, I thought this was going to be the lowest temperature that we were going to be seeing throughout the overnight period, but we're already there. That has me a bit concerned that it could even be dropping, say, below the freezing mark by the time that we get to tonight. Now, when you're looking at these temperatures again, keep in mind they could be a little bit locally cooler, and of course, our spots like Surrey, New West, Richmond, and Burnaby naturally going to be a bit colder than here in downtown Vancouver. But the one thing I do want to mention, I'm going to have a ton more information on this when I come back, is this. I've brought back the icon that is for wet snow or some rain for first thing tomorrow morning. This is not a guarantee that you yourself will be experiencing this, but it's definitely a possibility in some of the higher elevation regions of Metro Vancouver. So when I come back, I'll give you that full detail, but by the time the afternoon rolls around, it will be chilly, but at least that sun should make an appearance once again.
Ooh, Brett, you've got me excited. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, as the holiday season approaches, November and December can be a lonely time for many people. In BC, the youngest and oldest adults may be the most at risk of isolation, according to a recent study.
So we brought them together for our new series, Still Lonely, to hear what they had to say about connection, community, and cross-generational conversation.
I meet here people that are not from Vancouver and not from Canada to be much more open to say hi, to start a conversation.
I think unless you do interact with people of different generations, like myself, for teenagers and younger people and that, we don't really know what they're thinking. We don't have the same, we don't interact with machines like young people do.
Yeah.
I don't do Facebook. I have email at home. I have a little computer, and I didn't get it till I retired. So you have to interact with these young people to find out what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm afraid of connections because I'll always compare the option of being alone on my sofa, reading my book from cover to cover, versus going out and mingling with people.
Yeah.
There are fears on several levels.
Yeah, you see, and for me, I'm aware of that within myself too. That some part of me would just I'm just going to go out in the wilderness for a while, not meeting with people. I'm tired. But the other part, then I know I need it. But it's so hard to make that first step sometimes, and it's so anxiety.
Your life experience is so different from ours.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I also think there's the modern politics of today, and what's important to young people can be shared with people from all other different generations.
That's right.
The youth climate strikes are so powerful.
I think
so
they're
many
wonderful.
young people
And they have
get out
the
there
energy
and
to
fight.
walk over the bridge. I don't have the energy to walk over the bridge.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teenagers don't open their heart. They don't know how to do it. No one ever told them you have to give to get it. It's the same. A lot of teenagers try to act like they're the best, and they don't want to show that they actually need support. I didn't expect people to open up so much. Or I didn't even expect myself to open up so much. It was so cool.
It's just going out there and experiencing it yourself and kind of breaking down those stigmas and realizing that everyone is just a person and that you can learn from them.
I think people of all ages have something to share, and if you approach them the right way, they're inspiring.
I've always had respect for people, but I think just some stories I heard were really cool, and I think I'll remember them for a long time.
These conversations, watch them and they are really, really interesting. They, in this particular situation, we're talking about the generational isolation gap, loneliness gap, but we'll be doing this all throughout the week. And I think as we go forward, you hear some really interesting stories. This one was intriguing to me because, technology and how it's changed things. You used to have the sock hop where you'd go and chat. Now it's an app. Now it's Netflix. Now
you're
instead of going to
swiping right or
movies.
left, yeah.
I know. So no, it's really interesting. So we're going to continue it tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
And of course, CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Pro-democracy candidates swept local elections in Hong Kong on the weekend. Coming up, the response from Hong Kong's pro-Beijing chief executive.
And thanks for staying with us online during the TV commercial break, always commercial-free during our live streams. Okay, Harley-Davidson just became the first major manufacturer to sell electric motorcycles.
Yes, the new bikes were unveiled in Langley this weekend, but as our Deborah Goebel found out, while they may be the future, not everyone is on board.
Get your motor running. It's what the song says, and for some, the louder the better. Kind of an anthem for Harley riders. But there's a new song coming, and it's a whole lot quieter.
this is the future. So this is the beginning of electric motorcycles.
Harley-Davidson is the first major manufacturer to offer electric motorcycles at dealerships. Only 1,800 have been built this year. And at a sticker price of just over $37,000, they aren't cheap. You'll buy one?
If it comes kind of meets my budget.
But this is just the beginning.
In the next couple of years, they'll have a fairly big fleet of two-wheeled electric vehicles.
That's when he says the price will come down, more models will be offered, and with better battery technology, today's 235 kilometers of charge could be doubled.
No clutch, no shifting, just go. Yeah, that's the appeal to me.
And that's not the only selling point.
They go really fast.
Still, not everyone is sold on a world without torque and horsepower. Would you ever consider buying an electric one?
Never. Because it's not a motorcycle.
Al Dixon has been riding a Harley since 1969.
It doesn't look, it doesn't sound, it doesn't burn gas. It has no heart, no soul, it's got an electric motor.
Harley says it's always been about look, sound, and feel, but at more than 100 years old, the brand has got to keep current.
It's going to be, younger and younger people. Harley-Davidson is working hard to bring in more and more riders.
Some in the target audience out there aren't even old enough to drive yet. But do you think you'll buy a motorcycle?
Yes.
Research shows the younger demographic cares a lot about the environment and things like zero emissions. Plus, no gas and much lower maintenance charges are a big selling point. As for wild, well, that's a state of mind. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, by the time that little one gets old enough to ride a motorcycle, those will be the norm.
Exactly. It's just not the same, though. Some people want the noise. They want the rumble.
And you don't know if the power is actually, they say it's fast, but I don't know. There's something about it that doesn't feel as fast to me.
Yeah, there you go. All right, stay with us. Back in just a couple of seconds. We'll have the latest on what's making news around the world.
After a near sweep for pro-democracy candidates in Hong Kong and a record voter turnout, Carrie Lam acknowledged the general dissatisfaction there today.
As Greg Rasmussen reports, the embattled leader of the semi-autonomous Chinese region also says she'll listen to public opinion that emerged from the election and seriously reflect on it.
Surprise might be one word to sum up the reaction here today. Although pro-democracy forces were hoping for a boost, these results far surpassed even their expectations. For the general public, there was fear that once the votes were counted, a new round of violence and protests might break out, but for the most part, it was a calm day on Hong Kong streets. One official of a pro-democracy party told us the election has provided a boost in the fight for democratic reforms.
We are talking about having an independent inquiry to look into police misconduct. We are talking about having universal suffrage that is as promised in the basic law. Again, these are all reasonable and legitimate.
The overwhelming support at the ballot box for the pro-democracy parties is fresh trouble for Communist Party leaders in Beijing and the Legislative Council that controls the senior level of government in Hong Kong. They were hoping establishment pro-Beijing parties would win more seats and counter the weight of the protest movement. Instead, another domino has fallen, and in addition to a pro-democracy movement on the streets, a new batch of reformist politicians is now in power here at the local level. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Hong Kong.
And there is condemnation around the world tonight into how China is treating ethnic minority Muslims in that country.
Secret government documents obtained by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists in collaboration with CBC News reveal how officials in China have rounded up, imprisoned, and indoctrinated at least 1 million people.
These centers, what they are doing, is exactly what we read in George Orwell's novel 1984. These are mass brainwashing centers. The
leaked China cables expose mass arrests in Xinjiang province. along with prison camps and layers of surveillance and systemic brainwashing with the goal of so-called ideological transformation. Beijing is dismissing the reports as fake news. As the CBC's co-host of The National, Adrian Arsenault, discovered, for the 2,000 members of that minority living in Canada, the details are chilling but not surprising.
He's far from China, but not beyond its reach. A young Uyghur too afraid to reveal his identity.
Because Chinese government can track you everywhere.
His is a story of pressure, and he shows us documents he was pushed to send to China. His Canadian address, copies of his ID, and something extraordinary.
And they even got my blood type and DNA.
So how'd this happen? Back home in China, his parents had been approached by police, curious about where he was. The implied threat? Get the information or they might end up in the detention camps.
But
He tells us authorities already had seized his parents' passports so they can't leave China. For him to go back might mean detention.
How will you see your parents again?
I can't see them in other countries.
Not just one man's worries, surveilling, separating families seems part of China's plan. The leaked documents outline how people are to be tracked or refused approval for visas. Some who've left the country arrested the moment they cross the border back. The bulletins note watching people with dual citizenship and point out 5 are Canadian.
Yes, she spoke to me before.
After 20 years in Canada, Uyghur activist Rukia Turdish is less afraid for herself, but worries deeply about the Uyghur students here who reach out to her for help. Her phone seems a lifeline for them.
Some of them, even the mothers and fathers, force them, okay, so the police bothering me so much, send a power of attorney, write down the letter with the lawyer, just you're not my son anymore, or you're not my daughter anymore.
Beyond the heartbreak of having to disown their parents, some are pressured to return to China, frightened their families will be punished if they don't. Some students just disappear from Canada. Hard to know how many have gone.
At least 6, 7 of them told me. The rest of them didn't tell me because they're so scared. You see the face?
Her burden is to listen and be haunted by things she cannot change. That's Canadian Mehmet Takti's trauma too, and it's personal. This is his mom back in Xinjiang. He last spoke with her in October of 2016 and says it felt like goodbye.
She told me, if we're not able to meet this world, probably hereafter, and do not think too much about us and continue to do what is right for you and take care of yourself.
His fight for justice has felt lonely, but now the proof is out. He wonders what the world will do.
This is the largest abuse of state power since Second World War. If we do not issue a condemnation on this, so what else we will issue this condemnation?
Adrian Arsenault, co-host of The National, reporting there. And for more on the story, tune into The National tonight at 10. Well, does the solution to Vancouver's housing crisis rest on the future of the fairways? That is coming up.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Most of the people that work here will take the buses, and also most of the volunteers are low-income people that take the buses and they don't live in the area.
With a full shutdown of the bus system looming, concern for Metro Vancouver seniors. It's hoped the two sides in the dispute can reach a deal when they resume bargaining tomorrow. If not, Wednesday is expected to be chaos.
An international student from India has been identified as one of two people found dead in a Surrey home last week. Police say 21-year-old Prableen Kaur Matharu's death appeared to be a homicide. The body of an 18-year-old man from the Lower Mainland was also found in the home.
Well, with the benchmark price for residential properties in Metro Vancouver at just under $1 million, some think they have a solution to bring down housing prices here.
There aren't a lot of places in the region left to build on, but as Tina Lovegreen explains, experts say public golf courses may be the answer.
Teeing off all year is a West Coast luxury, and when you can do it in the middle of the city, even better.
I just live a block away, so I come down as often as I can.
Well, it's so close, and then, like, price-wise, I think it's competitive with other courses.
The publicly owned Langara Golf Course's central location is what attracts a lot of players. But that's also what makes it an attractive but controversial place to build housing.
Particularly when you see the numbers.
This urban designer and a colleague say there is a huge opportunity to take a bite out of the housing crisis in Vancouver by developing spaces like this one.
We're just not making land anymore, so here's a chance to think about the golf course in a more ethical way.
The city owns and operates 3 public golf courses, adding up to roughly 2 square kilometers of land. The UBC experts say if developed, it could house 60,000 people and be worth $20 billion.
Well, I'm against it because I like golf, so I think it's a great course too, right? So yeah, I'm totally against that.
There was time a few years ago where everything was being converted into a golf course, and now it's gone the other way for a while.
Okay, so not exactly welcome news for golfers, but the experts argue the sport isn't exactly on the upswing. And turning fairways into driveways is a conversation in other parts of Canada too. A handful of private clubs in Ontario have already been sold off for development.
The parkland we have is precious, and if you start developing and paving over, there's no way back.
But this Vancouver Park Board commissioner isn't ready to give up on the greens.
With the situation, with the population increasing in the neighborhood, that yes, more than just golf will be the answer.
But at the very least, the urban designers are asking the city to consider their pitch that building housing here is a good play. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
There will be a lot of very unhappy people if that happens.
If it happens, yeah. I've played, of course, Langara and Fraser View, and they are huge, huge pieces of land.
A lot of prime land.
So, yeah, we shall see what ultimately happens there.
We shall. Well, at 6:39 on this Monday evening, you're looking at a live shot of Grouse Mountain. What a difference a weekend can make. Grouse was bare on Friday and full of snow today. And down here, well, it's time to bundle up, get your scarves, hats, gloves, toques, and thick socks. Brett's here to break it down after the break. Okay, it's coming, and I am pumped.
I'm so happy to hear that. Winter lovers rejoice.
Yeah,
I think
great.
It's about time. This is going to be fun.
Up on the mountains.
Yeah, we'll keep it up there.
Down here too.
But even still, yeah, I really want to emphasize how uncertain tomorrow's forecast is. This is really just me putting the information out there in case you need to use it. It may not end up happening at all, but at least you heard it here first. It's possible. But I really want to show you a really cool time lapse this morning. Take a look at how awesome this is. The fog coming off the water there, absolutely enveloping the camera. You can't even tell what's going on based at that level. And then a few hours later, it just ends up clearing up rather nicely. The sun came out for the afternoon. It was beautiful. So those types of time lapses, those are kind of some of my favorite. It makes me feel like I'm traveling in a plane. If you've ever had that opportunity to sit up at the front, it's an amazing feeling. This upcoming week, though, is certainly going to be one that's going to be a little bit different than what we've seen. We have this area of high pressure on the eastern side of the Rockies that's going to be bringing a lot of cold air onto this side of the Rockies, and in fact, all the way over to Vancouver Island by the end of the week. And really, if I could not make this any more clear, that is cold air coming from the east. We are dealing with an Arctic outflow situation, as what it would be known as. There is a snowfall warning right now. Any travel along Highway 3 between Hope and Princeton, that's about 15 to 25 centimeters in the forecast by the end of tonight. But we won't have to worry about nearly that much here in the lower mainland. I'm really going to walk you through this just to show you what the potential is. This is just one model. This is not a guaranteed solution by any means, but really anywhere between 7 and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, if we get this little blip of moisture going across from east to west, that means temperatures could be cold enough to change this over into some wet flurries, maybe some snow, or maybe just some rain, depending on where you are. But by about 10 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be the last of it, and then it's going to clear up. And that really should be about the last of the precipitation that we see across the region for, well, quite literally the rest of the week. Overall, though, the overnight lows are going to be the dominant story, both not only tomorrow, but for the subsequent days after that. And you can take a peek here with a 5-day forecast. Yes, a little bit of rain expected there, but notice that by Thursday and into Friday, these overnight lows could be down toward -5, maybe even colder than that. But nevertheless, we're still looking at a lot of sunshine to get us through the whole week.
Whew, those are crazy temps.
Aren't they?
Thanks, Brett.
You're welcome.
Lawyers for the federal government are trying to delay compensation for First Nations children harmed by the on-reserve child welfare system. Just ahead, how they're hoping to make amends, but in a different way.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Your favorite holiday tradition is back. It's CBC Radio Canada's 33rd annual Open House and Food Bank Day on December 6th. Join me and your favorite CBC personalities at 700 Hamilton Street for live broadcasts, musical performances, and tours of the newsroom. Last year, we raised over $800,000 for local food banks across BC.
Now to Washington, D.C., where another top official has been fired.
Navy Secretary Richard Spencer pushed out yesterday after Donald Trump objected to the treatment of a Navy SEAL facing military justice.
As Susan Ormiston explains, this latest firing has many people wondering about the fallout.
It was Animal House at the White House today. First, Cash and Ben, the draft horses, delivering this year's Christmas tree. And then, with questions swirling around another high-level firing, President Trump emerged with Conan, the dog.
We just gave Conan a medal and a plaque. And it's really, and I actually think Conan knew exactly what was going on.
A brave dog, he said, who chased al-Baghdadi up a Syrian tunnel, was almost fatally injured, and survived. Unlike Trump's Navy Secretary, Richard Spencer, who was forced out on Sunday after the president objected to the way a Navy SEAL was treated. Eddie Gallagher was acquitted of murder in the death of a 12-year-old ISIS fighter, but he was demoted for taking a trophy picture of himself in front of the corpse. The Navy was considering expelling Gallagher from the elite unit, stripping him of his prestigious Trident pin. Trump wasn't about to let that happen.
With Eddie Gallagher, you know that story very well. They wanted to take his pin away, and I said, no, you're not going to take it away.
Enter the Defense Secretary, Mark Esper.
The case of Eddie Gallagher has dragged on for months and is distracting too many. It must end.
Following the president's order, the Navy SEAL keeps his rank, while the Secretary of the Navy is fired. Spencer blistered the president in an outgoing letter. I no longer share the same understanding with the Commander-in-Chief in regards to the key principle of good order and discipline.
What message does that send to the troops? That you can get away with things?
President Trump has a record number of cabinet departures in a first term. That's 10. Technically, the Navy Secretary is not in cabinet, but his leaving raises fresh questions about Trump's relationship with senior members of the military and his personal interference in military justice. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
Lawyers for the federal government were in court today trying to delay compensation for First Nation kids harmed by the on-reserve child welfare system.
As Olivia Stefanovich reports, the government says it does want to make amends, but in a different way.
A rare glimpse inside the federal court. Cameras allowed inside to record Canada's legal heavy hitters, making arguments for and against a landmark Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision.
The righting of historical wrongs is an important part of reconciliation, but it has to be done in a fair and equitable way.
The Liberal government is asking the court to suspend the ruling, ordering Ottawa to pay at least $40,000 to each First Nations child placed in the on-reserve child welfare system, and to any child denied access to full government services. The bill could total up to $8 billion. The government calls it an overreach.
If we wait for perfection, we'll be back here again and again and again and again, and we will never have a solution.
But lawyers for child advocates say that's no reason to undermine the judgment.
Remember that this tribunal is trying to remedy a situation caused by Canada, a situation which Canada has admitted it caused by its willful and reckless discrimination of First Nations children.
The government is planning to offer compensation, but it wants to do so outside of the tribunal. In part, it says because the ruling excludes children who were apprehended between 1991 and 2006.
We need to do compensation in a way that actually addresses a larger class of people in a fair and equitable manner.
It all rings of political obfuscation. And
child advocates call it a stalling tactic.
Canada has paid nothing. It's known about the compensation order being a reality for 3 years. It could have paid something to these children. It's chosen to pay nothing.
The proposed class action lawsuit the federal government is in talks to settle only deals with children. As it stands now, it doesn't address the pain and suffering their families went through. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. More like, oh, no, Christmas tree. That's coming up after the break. CBC's Open House and Food Bank Day is Friday, December 6th.
All of our listeners come down and they get to see their public broadcaster.
For more info, go to cbc.ca/open house.
All right, a little bit of bad news. Fewer Christmas tree farmers on Vancouver Island means there could be a shortage of trees this year.
Oh boy. Sanitation Christmas Trees has been in business for more than 50 years, but this year the owner is cutting back. She says a lot of tree farmers are retiring, and if they don't have family to carry on the tradition, the farms will likely have to shut down.
There needs to be more people that are willing to sacrifice the time that it takes to have a Christmas tree farm, because you plant the seedling and it takes 7 years for that tree to be 6-7 feet.
Some local organizations who depend on tree sales for their annual fundraisers are now scrambling to find enough trees to sell. A shortage means they'll likely sell out mid-December and may not be able to meet the need for their services this year. Gotta get in there early.
Gotta get in there early. All right, football fans in what?
Go ahead. I was gonna ask you if you're a real tree.
Totally.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Hopefully it won't affect us, but you never know. Okay, from trees to football, because that's what we do. The fans in Winnipeg, they're celebrating big time because the Blue Bombers finally brought the Grey Cup back to the city for the first time in 29 years.
Yeah, after a huge 33-12 victory over the Hamilton Tiger Cats last night.
As Cameron McIntosh reports, hundreds of fans gathered at Winnipeg Airport today to welcome the team home.
A day later, it's still sinking in, especially for the most ardent fans. Aaron Chernachan pulled his daughters from school just to be part of it.
I was almost enraged the last time the Bombers won the Grey Cup, and there's these moments here that you just got to cherish and take in. You never know when the next one's going to be.
How long have you been waiting for this?
A long time.
29 years, that's a lot of time to build up anticipation. There's also been plenty of disappointment along the way for Bomber fans. For many of these people, the wait has been so long, this is actually a once-in-a-lifetime event.
The former Tiger Justin Medlock to kick it off.
So pretty high emotional stakes then watching the team take the field.
Harris, big hole.
But the Bombers scored first.
Touchdown.
Never looked back and won convincingly.
The Blue Bombers, 2019 Grey Cup champions.
From the celebration on the field to Portage in Maine, which hasn't seen this since 1990.
It's the strength of Winnipeg. We're tough people.
All of it building up to this. The Grey Cup touching down in Winnipeg in Bomber hands, even if there was a little mishap.
It's just a little, wear and tear, Got to get some screws tightened.
I'm pretty sure that's happened before, though.
I'm pretty sure. This isn't the first time.
Who says Winnipeg can't have nice things? Team president Wade Miller lived through the drought as a player.
I believe this team is important for the province and the city, and it's a fabric of our community.
Chantal and Connor Grenko just hope it's not 29 years until the next one.
These guys don't really understand how long we've hoped for this.
Victory is fleeting. Savor it. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Remember the stories we did about the guy there that wore short pants? He had the bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's probably pretty happy because now he can wear pants.
I can imagine he's very happy, especially in a place like that.
Yeah.
Also, big viewership, 19% increase, 9.6 million viewers this year of the Grey Cup.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Halftime show, awesome.
Keith Urban?
Keith Urban, yeah.
Didn't watch.
Good. Really good. Thanks for watching tonight. Dan is here at 11 after the National.
Have a good night.